Hello dear Motorsport-Magazin.com friends and Formula One fans. It actually happened at the Miami Grand Prix. Lando Norris handed over a record to Nick Heidfeld, an unloved record, namely the record for the most podiums without a win. He actually did it, celebrating his first Grand Prix win on the 16th time on the podium. Of course, it is a big sensation, and you've probably noticed that there was a safety car which was possibly responsible for the victory, but only possibly. That's the unsatisfactory part of this race for me. For the second time in the Formula One season, Max Verstappen and Red Bull didn't win. For the second time, there are a few external circumstances that may have led to this, but we cannot answer it definitively. He retired in Melbourne, but the Ferrari was really fast, which is why he won. Just because of the retirement, yes or no, we'll never know, and now again. Lando Norris, damn fast on the track, but only won because of the safety car. We'll never know, but of course we want to talk about it. First of all, the race didn't start well for him, dropping back from 5th to 6th, and he was in 6th place for a very long time. You couldn't really see the McLaren pace. We talked about it at the beginning of the weekend. On Friday, the McLaren looked really strong with its update. You just couldn't implement it on the soft tires in the SQ3. Then it got a bit lost. But you could also see that the McLaren had more to offer because Oscar Piastri had a good start and was able to pass Charles Leclerc early on under his own steam and was in second position, and he didn't have to let Max Verstappen pull away at the front. And Oscar Piastri only had the light update package this weekend, so not the complete update, which we've already talked about. So you could see that there was actually a lot in it, but Lando Norris in his McLaren could not show for the first time. From the start on, he was trapped in 6th position and did not give the impression that he could be so much faster than everyone in front of him. But then came the first pit stops, and above all, Sergio Perez came in to change tires, who was directly in front of him at the time. That meant that Lando Norris had a bit of a clear run, and he was able to show that the McLaren had more to offer. He was able to reduce the gap to Max Verstappen. He was 10.7 seconds behind when the Red Bull of Sergio Perez pitted. 5 laps later, it was only 9.5 seconds. It does not sound that spectacular, but simply reducing the gap by over a second in 5 laps under your own steam is really something special in this Formula One, if you can do that on the Red Bull, so he was about 0.2 of a second faster. But then the race took a really spectacular turn when the safety car came out. Max Verstappen had just pitted to change tires, and then this safety car phase was of course an absolute stroke of luck for Lando Norris. Logan Sargent brought out the safety car, and because of that, Norris was able to change tires and keep his first position. It was a very unusual situation, and you thought what was actually happening just as the safety car came onto the track, because the safety car didn't catch Lando Norris in the lead, but Max Verstappen. Fred Vasseur joked a bit, saying, well, it's a habit, and just thought Max Verstappen was definitely leading, safety car in front of him. Now you ask yourself, was it perhaps intentional that the safety car caught Max Verstappen and not Norris, so that Norris could drive the lap, change tires, and stay in first position? Why didn't they wave Max Verstappen past the safety car as soon as they realized he wasn't the leader? Was that intentional, to really conjure up something? No, you have to say at this point, the race control sends out the safety car as soon as it is clear that a safety car is necessary. That has been determined, and then the safety car was out, and then it doesn't matter who is somewhere on the track. Then Bernd Maylander simply drives onto the track, and then he just collected Max Verstappen in this case. Why didn't he wave him past immediately? Race control had a look at where the cars were positioned, and then they said, okay, let's leave it like that for now. Then the field will be brought together more quickly. Then we can start the cleanup work faster, and therefore the safety car phase won't take so long. So it all looked a bit strange. The question is, of course, would Lando Norris have won this Grand Prix even without the safety car and even without this strange situation? So this strange situation, you have to say, if the safety car had come out directly in front of Norris, then McLaren could have reacted a few hundred meters beforehand and brought him in to change tires, so he would always have benefited from the safety car itself. I don't think we need to discuss the fact that a safety car was necessary. In that respect, the timing, it all looked a bit strange, but in the end it wasn't that dramatic. But if there hadn't been that safety car phase at all, would Norris have won? Well, would-be bicycle chain, I quoted this saying from Lothar Matthäus the other day. You did not quite understand it and thought I got it wrong. Then I just quoted someone else. But for now, I'll stick to Formula One and quote Max Verstappen. He said, if my mother had balls, she'd be my father. That was the quote of the day for me today. But of course, we are not content with that. Of course, we want to know what would have happened. Yes, we will never find out 100%, but let's conjugate the whole thing a bit. Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team boss, said that Lando Norris and McLaren won fair and square, which means under his own steam, well, he was 9.5 seconds behind. Before Verstappen came in for his pit stop, can you really say he won the whole thing under his own steam? Yes, he made up ground, we saw that, and we mustn't forget that you had different tires on in the second stint, and Lando Norris was driving excellently. After the restart, he pulled out a 7.6 second lead over Verstappen. Yes, there was another tire offset, 6 laps of fresher tires on Norris's side, so you can't forget that either. But Max Verstappen himself said that it just wasn't working for him on the hard tires, and he was already on the hard tires anyway, so the safety car had nothing to do with it. If we take another look at the McLaren strategy, it was designed to stay out for as long as possible and possibly speculating on the safety car. If you look at Norris's times, as soon as he had a clear run, he set green times, i.e. personal best times, sometimes even absolute best times at certain points. So he was really fast and there was no indication that this would stop. So tire degradation was generally very, very low in this race. Overheating, brutal difficulties all, but the degradation was small, and that's why McLaren said we'd leave him out as long as he set green times and as long as he didn't lose time to those who were already in the pits. That was not foreseeable at the time, so this safety car would not have come. So on the one hand, they admitted, yes, they speculated on the safety car. The longer you stay out, the more likely it is, of course. And on the other hand, you would have had much fresher tires at the end. You don't lose any time if it goes like that. You would have had a big tire offset at the end, so that might have been exciting again in that respect. Yes, the update obviously played its part. Lando Norris also said that afterwards, after the victory, they also found a special setup, slow corners, that was McLaren's big weakness. They explicitly adjusted the car setup to it. It wasn't the update that made it possible. No, they went in this direction with the setup. Of course, they also benefited from the update because they were faster in other corners and were then able to make this compromise. So a lot played together at that point. But let's also take a look at Max Verstappen at this point, because the whole weekend didn't actually go perfectly for him. We said yesterday, best time in practice, sprint pole, sprint win, pole for the Grand Prix, but you have always heard the radio messages. He was not at all happy with the car all weekend. The issue with overheating tires meant that Red Bull could not really play to the car's potential. And yes, that's why it was somehow not so surprising for him that the race didn't go so much better than it actually did. He said it was okay on the medium tire, but a disaster on the hard, and then he also ran over the bumper in the first stint. And then the question, of course, arises, what has this bum done to his car? Max Verstappen initially said that nothing really changed, the balance didn't change, it felt the same as before. Christian Horner revealed afterwards that the car was relatively badly damaged as a result, and that had a big impact on the pace. It's kind of a story that we hear quite often at Red Bull when there are little things. In this case, I would almost rather believe Max Verstappen when he says that there was nothing wrong with the car afterwards. The front wing was obviously not damaged. I don't think it was because of the bollard that the performance wasn't absolutely great. His problem throughout the race was mainly that he had completely different problems in low-speed and high-speed corners. So he had extreme oversteer in the low-speed corners and understeer in the fast corners. And it is difficult to play around with the setup in the car because they are obviously completely opposite things. So a lot of woulda, coulda, ifs at this point, but Verstappen is not quite 100% satisfied. Norris, on the other hand, is very satisfied. We won't find out, but maybe that's the beauty of this sport. We will, of course, see how the balance of power looks at other racetracks. But until then, there are still holidays in between, Father's Day and Mother's Day, and Max Verstappen has a wonderful quote about father and mother. No, you shouldn't surprise your parents with that on Father's Day and Mother's Day, but you can surprise them with a subscription to our print magazine, for example. If you don't want your mother to get cooking pots or vacuum cleaners again, but something that really interests her, then go to gayschenk.motorsport-magazine.com, and then you can give your father or mother, or preferably both, a print subscription. The gift subscription only runs for 1 year, and then you can give it again next year because your parents liked it so much. So don't forget, Father's Day and Mother's Day are just around the corner. Let's move on to fellow sportsman Kevin Magnussen. We talked about him at length yesterday, about the bad boy, and he did it again, 2 penalties again, but only 2 penalties today and in significantly more laps. Yes, the safety car phase, we mentioned it, triggered by Kevin Magnussen, who shot down Logan Sargent. It was a duel that was worth watching for the first time, which lasted for 3 corners, turn 1, 2, 3, and then there was a collision. Magnussen was able to continue. Sargent had to retire from his home Grand Prix. In the barriers, the stewards came to a relatively quick decision and said that yes, Kevin Magnussen was clearly at fault for this incident. He was on the inside but was not yet on the same level, and that's why you don't have to give him any space. So he should have backed off at that point, which is why he got 10 penalty seconds and 2 penalty points. Now he's already at 10 penalty points, and at 12 there's a race ban, so that's definitely going to be a big issue and exciting. The 10 seconds, however, were quite something because there was the safety car phase and the stewards decided really quickly. They said, no, 10 seconds, fixed, out. Yes. And then it was so quick that the safety car was still out and Magnussen was able to serve the penalty in the pits during the safety car phase. The stupid thing is that the regulations stipulate that you can only come into the pits during a safety car phase to change tires. Haas has now served this penalty, but didn't change any tires. That was obviously stupid. They didn't think that far ahead. They could have simply changed tires and served the penalty during the tire change. They somehow forgot it shouldn't actually happen. The whole thing then went before the stewards again. There was a subsequent drive-through penalty, another 20 seconds on top of that. Magnussen can't do anything about it at this point, mistake by the team, but at least there were no penalty points at this point. Unfortunately, the stewards also had to take action with Carlos Sainz after the race. I say unfortunately because I think it was a very interesting duel between him and Oscar Piastri. It went back and forth. At first, the Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz did not agree with the McLaren driver's driving style. There were sensational radio calls, but then there was a rematch. Carlos Sainz squeezed past Oscar Piastri, but he lost the rear end a little, hit Piastri in the car, damaged his front wing, and the race of Piastri was virtually over for him. Oscar Piastri was able to continue, but out of the points, yes, for Carlos Sainz, it went on afterwards. His car was not damaged. He finished 4th, but subsequently received a penalty from the stewards for this incident. Sergio Perez benefited from it. The stewards said that normally there are 10 seconds for such an incident, but well, because it was just a very slight loss of control, and that is why the contact only came about as a result, well, extenuating circumstances, only 5 seconds. I think that was racing. I think you could have left it at that. But this year there are new guidelines and you look at the whole thing a bit more strictly. It's annoying. But that wasn't actually the worst luck for Carlos Sainz in this race because he says, I could have won this Grand Prix. Why? He was in the pits to change tires 1 lap before the safety car came out. And now he says, well, if I hadn't come in there, of course I would have come in under the safety car, and I was still ahead of Lando Norris at that point, and that means I probably would have won the race. Whether that would really have been the case is exciting because Norris was already significantly faster than Sainz in this race. We looked at the times before the aforementioned pit stops. Sainz had lost a lot of ground to Norris. Norris had already caught up with Verstappen, but even more so with Sainz, closing the gap from 5 seconds to around 2 seconds. But then the question is, would the superior McLaren pace of Lando Norris have helped in the end? Because Norris still had to pass Sainz and overtaking was anything but easy. So, exciting topics after this race. I'm curious to see what you say, whether Sainz could have won the race, whether Norris might have won the Grand Prix even without a safety car. So these are all exciting questions. A lot of would have ifs. I'm now interested in your point of view. And if you still haven't had enough of Formula One, then you can take a look at our talk channel. Imola is just around the corner. Imola almost exactly 30 years ago. A very tragic weekend, the darkest weekend in Formula One history. I talked about it with legendary reporter Roger Benoit. Well, this time not on our talk couch where we normally talk on the talk channel, but via a video chat. He told really exciting anecdotes from that time about encounters with Ayrton Senna. Be sure to watch. And now it remains for me to say a big thank you to many colleagues here in the office who worked through the nights, Miami means very unpleasant working hours for us. You might not even realize that it's pretty hard for us, and especially for the colleagues who have to edit and check my videos here. So special thanks go out to Patrick and Stefan. The night shifts, you can't even say night shifts anymore, nights and whole morning shifts, mornings and whatever. So that's not a matter, of course, so that you get these beautiful videos. Many thanks to my colleagues at this point.